Welcome, everyone. And thank you so much for joining the Garrison Institute's live interactive webinar. Today, our guest is Dawa Tarchin Phillips. Dawa is an international meditation teacher and former monk. He's the founder of Empowerment Holdings and president of the International Mindfulness Teachers Association, a professional organization for mindfulness teachers from 30 countries. Dawa completed 2 3-year meditation retreats and is a Dharma teacher and authorized Buddhist Lama. He co-founded and co-led a University of California Neuroscience Research Center for Mindfulness, and today leads retreats and teaches mindfulness and meditation, spiritual awakening, awakened leadership, social justice, and conscious business in the US and around the world. He is a contributing author for Mindful Magazine, Tricycle Magazine, and Lions Roar. His work in scientific research has been featured in the New York Times, Huffington Post, Men's Fitness, Forbes, and Fast Company. Before we begin today's session, I'll go over a few logistical items about our gathering. We're on a Zoom webinar, so participant audio and video are off. You'll only see Dawa and, for the time being, myself. For anyone unable to attend live, we are recording these sessions. You'll have a chance to view these sessions, as well as a schedule of upcoming programs at garrisoninstitute.org. We offer these sessions free of charge as a goodwill gesture to support our community during such times of heightened uncertainty. We would welcome donations of any amount to help us continue to offer these sessions. Thank you. Finally, we'll have time for Q&A during this gathering. You can post your questions in the Q&A panel, which is accessible at the bottom of your screen by hovering your arrow over the Q&A button. We're on for an hour today, and we'll respond to as many questions as we can. Please forgive us if we're unable to get to your question. Thank you again, Dawa, for being with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Amy. And hi, everyone. My name is Dawa Tarchin Phillips, and today's session is entitled Steps Toward Real Peace. This is a very challenging time for many reasons and also for many people. The pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, has affected the livelihood of millions of people, has affected the health and the well-being and even the survival. Many people have experienced great loss and also fear and anxiety and worry and uncertainty. And also in the United States, we are going currently through another very significant transformational challenge around social justice and around Black Lives Matter and the way that we treat each other. So this is a time where peace is an important topic. And I wanted to offer this webinar today around this theme because we are actually sharing a unique experience as people around the planet. I travel quite a bit for work, and it's moving to see how these challenges currently are, for the first time, really including all of mankind, all of, even, let me say it differently, all of humanity. And the solutions that are being considered are solutions that have to include all of humanity. And that is the same, actually, whether we're talking about the pandemic or we're talking about Black Lives Matter, which has also seen significant calls to actions all around the world. So we are facing these challenges as humanity, these evolutionary challenges, and one could think, or one could hope, that this is over soon. But when we look at some of the challenges ahead around climate and around digital technological evolution and around the global economic realities and the interdependency of all economies around the world, it's easy to understand that we are not at the end of this. We're probably at the beginning. and a lot more will be demanded of each of us with regard to how we grow as people and how we grow as communities and how we learn to live together. And so I hope that the webinar I do today will be a small contribution and maybe give some food for thought, and maybe also inspire some future practice, and also allow an opportunity today to be together in a space of mutual respect, in a space of care, in a space of compassion and understanding, and give us, maybe add a little drop to this growing, ongoing process that we're all in. We have an hour, which is not a lot of time, and there will be things that I'm going to be touching on today that might you wish that we would go deeper into, or that we would have more time for. And so I want to let you know that this webinar will be made available through Garrison Institute. You can rewatch it, and also that there will be links to resources where you can learn more about the work I do, but also resources that Garrison makes available to many other teachers and courses and programming and so on. So please take this as an opportunity, let's say a door, so to speak, to continue on your own journey of discovery around some of the topics and themes that I'll touch on today. I'm going to switch over because I prepared a few slides I want to share with you as part of this presentation today. I want to cover 5 themes in the presentation today. I'll talk about what it means to face systemic challenges and why systemic challenges require systemic solutions. I want to introduce some daily Dharma routines that are very practical and very helpful, that I practice myself and that might also inspire you to practice. I want to talk about behavior, I want to talk about paradigms, and I want to talk about accessing a dimension that is beyond self, that is a dimension of wisdom and compassion that allows us to access possibilities for solutions that might not immediately come to mind when we feel overwhelmed by the challenges that we're facing. The first thing is regarding systemic challenges. So what is so important to recognize about the challenges that we're currently facing is that many of the challenges, they weren't desired to be so challenging. It's not like we were hoping to have a pandemic, or that we were hoping to have the kind of social justice challenges and interracial conflicts that we are seeing. But these are effects. These are sometimes wanted, sometimes unwanted side effects, yeah? Collateral damage, so to speak. And these effects happen because we are living in a system. We're living in a system in which actions have consequences. And because we're living in a system, our approaches to solving the situations that we encounter, or our approaches to generating different outcomes, also have to be systems based. And what makes the wisdom teachings of the Dharma so potent is that they are actually systemic solutions, which means that they are not linear solutions. The Buddha called his teaching the Eightfold Path. In the path of practitioners that follow the teachings of bodhisattvas, the teachings are called the 6 perfections, or the 6 paramitas. And many times when we are thinking about solutions, we're thinking about linear steps to solving problems. What do I do first? What do I do second? What do I do third? And even here, I'm providing a webinar where I'm introducing, these 5 bullet points, you can say. And you may think, okay, so this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And I want to introduce you to the idea that that is not the way that real peace works. And that is also not the way that we're going to solve the challenges that we're facing today. But we have to consider that the problems that are systemic will require systemic solutions, which means that there will be different things that have to be done all in concert with each other, rather than in a step-by-step way. And that is very different to our usual way of thinking. We usually think in linear fashions, and it takes us out of our self-centered way to consider systems thinking. But I want to really drive this point close to you, because when you are looking at the Dharma, you'll see that the Buddha never proposed a linear solutions. He always proposed systemic solutions from the Four Noble Truths, which are four truths that all work together to explain the path, from the Eightfold Path, which are eight spokes, eight right ways of relating to reality that bring about the solution, from the six perfections I mentioned, which are six transcendent qualities that bring about the solution. All of these solutions are systemic solutions. I want to talk about another thing here that I listed out for you, because I listed out context, actor, acted upon, event, trigger, action, result, and consequence, which introduces you to this idea that we are always an actor in an environment, and that we are relating to others. So this, in a Dharma context, is also what is referred to as mandala. Yeah, there is a center, and there is an environment or a surrounding. The Tibetans use a word for that, kilkor, which means center and surroundings. But what it really means is that our perception is navigating from a perceived person, a perceived I, perceiving the other, perceiving others in a environment, in a context. So this is the system, you can say, in which conflict arises. Conflict arises between the perceived I, the perceived other, and the perceived environment. And so when we are looking for solutions, it's really important to take in that whole perspective and to say, how can I bring about peace that is inclusive of that entire situation, where I don't approach peace as something that I just want to experience for myself, or I don't approach peace as something that I just want to experience between myself and the other, or I don't approach peace as something that I just want to experience between myself and the environment. But I understand that if there is to be peace, it has to be the entire situation. Peace has to be something that includes everything that is the foundation of my experience. So for yourself, think about peace for a moment maybe, and ask yourself, where do you have peace in this context, and where don't you have peace? Which is the relationship that is the most peaceful, and which is the relationship maybe that is the least peaceful in your own life? What is sure is that the relationship to ourselves, the relationship to other human beings, and the relationship to our environment is coming under scrutiny. And we have navigated in the current system to a point where the collateral consequences of our lack of mindfulness, of our lack of wisdom, and our lack of compassion is bringing about collateral damage or unwanted consequences to a large extent. So when we look at future solutions, we would be wise to not repeat the mistakes of isolated solutions, but to really look at that if we want to have systemic change, our solutions have to be systemic, even on an individual level, to approach it in that way. The second point is, how can we develop some basic Dharma routines? And here are a few Dharma routines that I think will be very helpful. The first thing is, first thing in the morning, to begin the day with your intention. Yeah, there's a short story I want to share with you about two neighbors, and both neighbors have this desire to plant a tree, a fruit tree to be exact. And the first neighbor plants the tree in front of the house, and he waters it, he protects the tree, he fertilizes the tree, and the whole time he's thinking that when the tree is fully grown, it will yield fruit that he will enjoy. The second neighbor also plants a tree, but she plants it in front of the house right up to the fence, and she waters it, nurtures it, fertilizes it. All the while she's thinking that when the tree is fully grown, anyone who passes by can enjoy the sweet fruit of that tree. What's important about these two cases is that they both have exactly the same work. They have the same amount of labor, but they have a very different result. And the reason they have a very different result is because of their intention. Because from the very beginning, they had a different intention. And so when you go about your day, the day that you will face, the challenges you have to go through, the work you have to do during the day, might be exactly the same as someone else. But the intention with which you do it can bring about a very different result. In addition to that, when you take a moment in the morning to connect with your purpose, and with that I mean the kind of quality of the heart that you wish to bring into your life, the quality of relationship, the quality of connection that you wish to bring into your life. And you just take a moment, no matter what your job is, or no matter what your day will be like, and you just ask yourself, how do I wish to relate to myself today? How do I wish to relate to other people today? What is my intention for today? You bring your attention down from the head into your heart, and you begin to move with benevolence. I'm saying this because intention is the one thing that most human beings scan for when they enter in an environment, because it lets us know whether we are safe or not. It lets us know whether or not we can be ourselves in that environment, or whether there is threat. When you enter a room with people in it, the first thing you will try to tune into is, am I going to be okay in this room? Do I have to be on guard? Do I have to be careful? So we have a very fine-tuned radar or nervous system around intention. But we oftentimes don't make use of intention in order to pacify ourselves, in order to actually put ourselves at ease in the container of our own intention. So I want to invite you to do that, to have a simple practice in the morning where you put yourself at ease through generating benevolence for yourself and then extending that benevolence to others. That is one of the best ways to impact your nervous system. Body gratitude is a simple practice to appreciate the body you have for everything it's done for you. Now, there's a lot of things we usually don't like about our body. Maybe it's too tall, too skinny, too fat, the nose is too long, the ears are too far apart. We don't have enough hair, we have too much hair. There are so many things that we can criticize about our body, and that most of us usually do. And so body gratitude is just appreciating your body for what it's done for you. Just come up with something and find a way of expressing body gratitude. I recommend for this practice to actually rub yourself, touch your shoulder, and talk to your body. Let it know that you appreciate it for what it has to offer you. And the fact that you're still here, the fact that you can participate in this webinar means your body's doing things for you. It's holding you up right now. It's giving you ears to hear what I'm saying. It's giving you eyes to look at the screen. All of this is given to you by your body. And so body gratitude on a daily basis can generate a lot of support and a lot of foundation for real peace. Breath sufficiency, particularly at the moment with the video footage that we've seen of our African-American brothers and sisters struggling around breathing with regard to police brutality. Breath sufficiency is that if you actually can breathe, that you acknowledge the fact that you have enough air, that you have enough air where you are right now to breathe deeply. And it's funny because there are not many things that we truly need for survival. If COVID has shown us one thing, is that we have a lot of things in our life that aren't essential. And when these services fall away, we're still able to get by. Now, well, breath is not one of them, right? So the fact that you have sufficient breath is something that you don't actually notice until you don't have it anymore. And it's one of the things when you speak to survivors of COVID-19, one of the things they'll share with you is how much anxiety it triggers when they cannot breathe deeply anymore, and how they didn't notice when they were healthy how valuable it is to have a normal deep breath. So this is not just about mindfulness of the breath. This is actually an appreciation practice of sufficiency of breath, that you are rich in breath, rich in air. Many of us oftentimes don't feel like we are rich, or we don't feel like we have enough, or we don't feel like we are connected to this experience of sufficiency and of abundance. And so breath sufficiency can be a very important practice to actually allow you to feel that sufficiency. Connection garden has to do with acknowledging the relationships that are in your life, no matter how many, no matter how few, and to treat them like a garden, to treat them like you would want to treat flowers or vegetables or anything that exists in your garden, which means you water them, you nurture them, you acknowledge them, and you appreciate them. Yeah. So many times when we have people in our lives that are important to us, we fail to nurture those relationships on a daily basis, and to have a practice of actually appreciating and nurturing the people in our lives on a daily basis. Right now, we're also at a phase where many people are at each other's throats and are in conflict, and many people actually don't feel appreciated, either because they get grouped into in with other people for behaviors they don't want to be identified with or associated with, or because they are invisible in our society. So this is about recognizing that human beings are whom you are connected with, whether you like it or not. You actually have a connection with all humans, whether those connections are positive or those connections are not positive. And sometimes connections that are not positive become positive, and sometimes connections that are not positive or that are positive become not positive. When you acknowledge all the connections that are there and you treat them like a garden, you are able to nurture the connections that you have. And I have found in my life that even those relationships that are not positive respond to my nurturing intent and my nurturing disposition. But that is something to be developed. It's a daily Dharma routine. Daily forgiveness has to do with forgiving yourself and others. It's pretty straightforward. It also has to do with the fact that real peace is not only about gaining something, it's also about losing something. It's not only about developing something new, it's also about letting go of something old. And so daily forgiveness practice is where you look at how you have shown up, and it allows you to let go of what was yesterday and really arrive back in the present. I highly recommend it. It is underrated because it is not so often talked about, but I highly recommend you develop a daily forgiveness practice in the way that works for you. Brain Alliance is a daily Dharma routine that has to do with neuroscience. We know more about how the brain works from the last 25 years of research than really any time in human history. And a lot of the Dharma practices, when you do study neuroscience, you understand how intelligent the Dharma practices are, because they work with your biology in a very skillful way to bring about health and well-being. And there are a number of hormones that have to do with health and well-being that are generated by the way that you think about certain things, or by the attitude that you develop about certain things, or by the way that you act. And it would be really helpful for you to know what these are and to understand them. One of them is called dopamine, which is a feel-good hormone, a reward hormone that normally you obtain when you set goals for yourself and you achieve them. It is also a hormone that many people get from going on social media or doing things that in excess are not that good for them. But actually having some dopamine release is it makes you feel good. It's not so much nurturing as it is actually part of the pleasure center that makes you feel good. So set goals for yourself, small goals, in a way that is benevolent, and achieve them and experience that dopamine release when you achieve the sense of completion and the sense of reward for having done something. Then there is serotonin, which is a positive hormone that gets released when you have a sense of, when you regain a sense of control. And I'll talk more about that, because what is frustrating at the moment is that there are so many things in our life that we wish to control and that we can't. And so serotonin levels often get depleted when people experience prolonged stress levels for prolonged stress for a long period of time. And you can actually regenerate serotonin by just shifting your focus to what actually really is possible for you to have a sense of control over, and letting go of everything else. I'll talk about that. Oxytocin, which is the connection hormone. And oxytocin makes you feel very warm and fuzzy in the heart. And it's usually what you generate when you watch kitten videos or puppy videos or videos of babies, yeah? So there's a demonstrable effect of these videos because you feel warm and fuzzy. Now, when you are able to generate that simply by taking some time and thinking about loved ones or thinking about friends and family in a way with gratitude and appreciation, you're doing something for yourself that is bringing about peace, that is bringing about equilibrium and well-being. Endorphins, which are hormones that get released when you exercise or when you generate some excitement around something, are also very, very important for overall well-being. And then there is GABA, which is a hormone that is generated through meditation and through allowing yourself to be calm, and anandamide, which is generated when you are experiencing balance, which is named after Ananda, which is the Sanskrit word for bliss. So these 6 neurotransmitters, these 6 hormones, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, GABA, and anandamide, are happiness hormones, are factors of well-being that come about by the way that you relate to your experience. Now, the important thing about these are that normally in a person that doesn't understand them or that is not mindful of them, they happen as well, but they happen accidentally, and they're generated just occasionally. There's really no reason why that should be the case. You actually have the opportunity every day to take a moment and to generate some of these neurotransmitters and some of these hormones in yourself by the way that you are relating to your body, mind, and heart. Which brings us to behavior, and particularly to mindfulness. Mindfulness, in the simplest terms, is your ability to be present. Now, the misconception is, with regard to real peace, is that we always want to be present. We don't actually always want to be present. And it's really important to become real about how valuable it sometimes can be to be absent-minded when things are overwhelming, and how often we want to check out because things are overwhelming. Because if you can be honest about the benefit that you actually receive from being spaced out or distracted or absent-minded, then you can also look at the underlying value transformation that has to happen for mindfulness to actually become something natural, something organic, something not forced. The way that you get to a mindfulness that is not forced is not because you are forcing it on yourself, but because you're looking at the underlying value. How important is it for you to be present? Why is it important? What do you get out of it? And how important is it for you not to be present? What do you get out of it? And as you look at that, you are able to slowly actually work through appreciating what you get out of mindfulness more than what you get out of being absent-minded. When that becomes clear, it is not any more difficult. It is also not any more forced. Nobody has to force you to breathe. You know what you get out of it. You wouldn't think about not breathing. Yeah, it is very clear to you. And as mindfulness becomes equally clear, it is not something difficult or something forceful. It will actually become something very, very simple because you're aware of its value. The other reason why I mention it here is because it brings clarity. And you need clarity in order to develop a sense of control and to make use of your sense of choice. Now, when we look at what we can control, there's really only 5 things. And a lot of people try to control way too many things. And they try to control things that they cannot and will not ever have any control over. And when you can let that go, when you can allow yourself to really let go of the things you cannot and will not ever control, then you can begin to change the relationship to the things you can control. So what are the things you can control? Learn to control if you choose to. You can learn to control what thoughts you choose to repeat and what thoughts you choose to let go of. Yeah, thoughts arise all the time. You can learn to control which ones you engage with and which ones you simply let go. You can't control that they're coming. You can only choose which ones you prolong. Then you can learn to control your attitudes. You can learn to control how you relate to yourself, to others, and to the world. You can learn to control the images you hold in your mind, what you imagine. You can learn to control what you say, and you can learn to control what you do. And that's it. Yeah, so those 5 things, what you think, the attitude you have, what you imagine, what you say, and what you do, are the only 5 things that you can develop a sense of control over. Now, the reason I'm saying this here is because they actually happen in the present. Your thoughts happen in the present, attitudes happen in the present, what you imagine happens in the present, what you say and what you do happens in the present. And so if you're not present, you are losing that sense of control, even in those areas where you could have some semblance of a sense of control. So the suggestion I have here in order to develop more steps to real peace is to simplify and to make a list of, maybe also right here after this webinar, of the things that you can control over, and begin to pay attention there, begin to focus there, and begin to teach yourself and reteach yourself to not invest your time and effort in those things you will never control. If you do take charge of those 5 things I mentioned, you will be able to influence every situation you're in, but you'll be able to influence it through what you can actually control. And that is the way that you can develop real peace. It's also important to understand, like I said at the beginning, that it's not just about adopting. There's also things that you have to let go of. It's not just about what you do, it's also about what you don't do, which means that in the systemic solutions to the challenge of a systemic problem, we are making shifts. Yeah, we're shifting out of behavior and we're shifting into behavior all the time. We're saying goodbye to certain behaviors and we are adopting new behaviors. We are stopping to do certain things and we're starting to do new things. And that's really all it is. So when we're thinking about solving systemic problems, we can make that very complicated and we can make it very complex. But it is not. It is not that complicated. It really boils down to adopting behaviors that we haven't yet and abandoning behaviors that were not fruitful, and doing things that we're not doing yet and stopping to do things that are not useful. And that is how we transform systems. And that is how we enter into real peace. I want to also share with you here 4 little shifts in paradigm that can be very helpful for you. The first one is moving out of interpretation into observation. That means that when we look at ourselves, or we look at the situations we're in, or we look at society, and we look at what is happening in our country or in our world, we can easily fall into interpretation. And depending on how you interpret things, you can really make yourself miserable. And you can also generate increasing conflict, increasing tension, increasing actually lack of peace in your life. So moving into observation means that you're choosing to observe as clearly as possible, nakedly, what is taking place. And you have that ability. You have the ability to observe versus to interpret. Now, there's nothing wrong with interpreting. It is just to understand that it has an impact on you, that when you interpret things, depending on how you interpret things, you're either generating or you are destroying peace. So the question when you go into interpreting should be, am I interpreting in a way that promotes peace, or am I interpreting in a way that destroys peace? And when you are staying with observation, then you can leave things with naked observation and you can come to a more clear, let's say, course of action that isn't based on misinterpretation. So that's one thing. When you interpret, you also slip into generating labels. And labels are basically the concepts we have for everything. We have labels for ourselves, labels for others, and we have labels for the world that we live in. The alternative to that is to relate to everyone's humanity. Now, sometimes that humanity is easily visible, sometimes it is very, very difficult to discern, and it's not like we all behave with humanity all the time. But you have the opportunity to recognize the labeling and switch out of it. Systems versus improvisation has to do that the challenges that we are currently facing are challenging, but they are also challenges that represent the human condition. And the human condition is not new. The human condition is something that every human being since thousands of years has had to deal with when they were born into it. And so when we look at the human condition that we're in and we think it is unique, then we fail to recognize all of the wisdom and all of the understanding that already exists about thriving in the human condition. And we tend to improvise. We tend to think that really what is required here is that we, in our kind of unique style, wing it. And what I want to introduce you to is the fact that you're living in a world in which incredible understanding exists about how peace works, how happiness works, how relationships work, how your mental, physical, emotional health works, how nonviolent communication works, how solidarity works, how you could feed the entire world without anybody going hungry. So we actually live in a world in which the information and the knowledge and the understanding exists. But we also live in a world in which most people improvise. And so the idea here is, can we share more of the knowledge we have and feel less of a need to improvise? And can we connect more about the methods, the tools, the understanding by which every human being can find peace and success and stability and safety, and an opportunity to live their life with peace and dignity? Or do we leave every human being in a condition where they have to improvise and they are struggling and they're trying to make ends meet? And that is a paradigm shift. Is a paradigm shift away from this idea that that life is a fight and you have to get through it by yourself, and toward the idea that the knowledge and the wisdom and the tools and the method exist. They have existed for a very long time. And what we really have to do is make sure that everybody has access to them, that everybody can understand them. And finally, the idea that you gather feedback, yeah? The courage to make mistakes and the courage to learn from them through the feedback you receive, and to step out of dysfunctional repetition in order to learn and in order to grow. So the dimension beyond the self. The dimension beyond the self really is about your intention, and it has to do with this idea of inclusivity. The easiest way to connect with this dimension beyond the self is to direct your intention to include everybody. Life really has the intention to be supportive of every living thing. And when we align ourselves with that intention that life has for every little thing, for every living thing, we begin to connect with the dimension of life beyond the self. The self can be in conflict with most of life, and the self can also be in competition with most of life. The self can be in a state of mind where it is operating from this paradigm that others, it's going to be either me or them. Yeah? That either they or I will thrive. The dimension beyond the self actually has the best interest of all beings at heart. And so the quickest way, the most meaningful way, is to open yourself to this benevolence. Now, that doesn't mean condoning. It doesn't mean supporting everything that is happening, but it means holding the benevolence for all life and allowing that benevolence to come through you. Trust is also something important because most of us trust as a response to having things go our way. And what I'm talking about here is trust as an investment, meaning that even when things don't go your way, even when there is conflict, even when there is trouble, even when there is riots, even when there are demonstrations, you invest trust. And that's a very different way of relating to trust. That trust really is about you. It's not so much about what is going on in the world around you. And when you generate trust and you invest trust, you make yourself be at peace. And when you withdraw your trust, when you stop trusting, you are reducing your access to states of peace. You can generate trust when you're by yourself. You can generate trust when you're with friends and family. It's more about understanding that you are a generator of trust rather than a reactor or someone who responds with trust to others. This trust, when you generate it, you can bring it into uncomfortable situations, unknown situations, anything you'd like. And what that means is that you are able to generate your own sense of safety, yeah, and your own sense of well-being, no matter the circumstances. Normally, we think that we cannot trust in a situation where we don't know what others will do, or we don't know what others will say. And that keeps trust levels very low. And because we are currently in a situation where it is so uncertain and there's so much conflict and there are so many despicable things going on, the tendency is that everyone withdraws and the trust between us is reduced and it goes down. And the challenge is to actually recognize that this is an invitation to shift our relationship with trust and to become generators of trust again. I think I will pause here so we have some time for questions. The baseline roofline concept here really refers to a simple understanding, and that is that developing real peace is not just about achieving something. You lift the roofline, so to speak, by putting effort, but you raise the baseline by healing, by releasing things, by letting go. And so real peace is not only achieved through progress and achievement and practice and effort. It is also achieved through giving up things, through letting go of things, through releasing things, and through healing. So I wanted to share those things. I hope that they will be helpful and that they give you some opportunity to practice. And I invite some of you who would like to maybe ask a question regarding some of the things I've shared.
While people type in their questions, Dawa, thank you so much. There was so much great information, and just to let the audience know, we will have this recording and people can revisit your very interesting slides. Thank you for making these very complicated life experiences and boiling it down to these specific pinpoints. Very helpful. We have a question actually. Could you speak about the evolution of your practice? I understand that you've done 2-3 year retreats. Was that, where were they, and were they complete silence? Can you talk
Yeah,
about
so
that?
I did those retreats in a monastery called Kundrolling, which is in the French Auvergne. I was there to study with a Tibetan Buddhist master named Gendin Rinpoche. He wrote a wonderful book called Heart Advice of a Mahamudra Master. That is a wonderful Dharma book. And I lived there for 12 years and was a monk for 10 and spent 7 years in meditation retreat. Those retreats were small groups of monks that lived together for 3.5 years. And so among us, we did speak because we had certain chores we needed to do as well as meditate. But most of the day, about 14 hours a day, we were in meditation, each of us in our rooms practicing. So the retreats are about 14 hours a day of meditation, 365 days a year, and they are done in very small groups of monks that support each other, but have no contact with the outside.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that information.
Yeah.
We have a question from Pam. How can we teach people to communicate and still respect each other's differences rather than making a viewpoint wrong?
Yeah, that has to do with that we usually consider communication speaking. And so the frustration happens when two people are speaking and neither one is hearing the other. And so the shift that has to happen is that we understand that communication really doesn't start until we listen. Neither the things the other person is saying nor the things we are saying have any value until they are heard. So the shift has to happen from speaking more to hearing more. And when we make that emphasize, when we shift that first ourselves, first we model it ourselves. We say, I'm really looking to hear you, and I hope you do the same. And then we can have communication. Then we begin to treat communication as what it is. It comes from together with, right? So what we have right now is that we have everyone saying something and very few people hearing and very few people listening. So that is the way you shift the quality of communication, is you shift the listening, you shift the hearing. And you have to also look at what you're saying, and you have to ask yourself, am I being heard? Am I being understood? And if you're not, then it's important to find different ways of saying it, because it literally is like speaking a foreign language. So that is where we are at. We have to work on the way we communicate and really become more interested in hearing each other than in saying things.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. We have a question from Kathy. Are there specific words, actions, suggestions to generate trust, or is it mostly about posture of intention and grounded awareness?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what you have to see when you look at trust, you have to pay attention to the way that your mind uses this quality of imagination. And I call that the what if red flag. Yeah. So when in your mind the thought arises, what if? Whatever happens after that what if is pure imagination. Either way, if you say, what if I win the lottery? Or you say, what if I get sick? Whatever comes after what if is by definition imagination. But depending on what you choose to imagine, you really affect yourself. Yeah. So even though it's all imagination, and so it's all the same with regard to what it is, it's not all the same with regard to the effect it has on you. If you choose to imagine things really ending terribly, you contract, you restrict physically, mentally, and emotionally, you become contracted and you lose access to your resources. So you not only lose your well-being, you actually compromise your functioning. When you add things that are constructive after what if, then you actually relax and your body opens up, your mind opens up, and you gain greater access, or you maintain access to your resources. So that is a simple tool you can use to actually generate trust, is by what it is you add after what if, and to choose things that have a positive effect on your health, your well-being, and the openness with which you go through life.
Thank you so much. Here's a question from Christian in the chat box. Thank you, Dawa. How can we practice these principles when we are faced with having to tend to demands of the historically marginalized? When these demands are presented from the wounded soul and in ways that are not mindful of each other, the need for authentic relationships and the value of the I-thou relationship?
Yeah, it's a great question. The key to that really is learning how to relate to the truth. You know, what is healing is truth, and so, but truth expressed with empathy, and truth expressed with compassion. So the reason why we're so wounded and we're so disillusioned and we're so mistrusting of each other is because we have been telling each other lies for so long that we don't even know what truth feels like. And so when we take steps to speak truth and to accept truth to be spoken to us, we find our compass again. Yeah. So what we are having in terms of our shared history is that there's a lot of lies in our shared history, and these lies were told to cachet uh, uh, greed or violence or oppression. And so it really has affected our trust with each other, and it has affected how we know ourselves and that we know ourselves. So the solution is there. The solution is change the relationship to truth from something we fear to something, again, we can celebrate and we can actually rejoice in, even when the truth is difficult, even when the truth is painful. And that is something for everyone. There's nobody excluded from that. We're not on the, it's not about being on the right side of history. It's about developing a shared appreciation and a shared willingness to live in the light of truth. And in that light of truth, we actually can all prosper.
Thank you so much. This looks like that we're up to our hour now, so I apologize. Yes. We won't get to all the questions. Dawa, thank you so much for your time.
May I say maybe one closing comment?
Of course.
Okay, so just a closing comment, because these are truly difficult times, and on top of that, we're dealing with the health challenges. Yeah, to whatever degree you can extend some of your kindness to yourself and others, you're making a difference. And also, the fact that you are here right now and you're alive during these times means you're really important, and you are here to make something different happen. And so what I hope you'll take away from this as well is a sense of empowerment, that this is not about the unusual or unique individuals that come on here and that give talks or presentations. This is about you. This is about you becoming a leader in a revolution of consciousness and a transformative movement that includes every single human being currently alive. So I hope you take that away, because we're coming out of a time when these roles of people who hold wisdom were unique and few and isolated individuals. And where we're going is a shared holding of wisdom, a shared stewardship of these qualities of wisdom and compassion. And so you are just as important as anyone else in making this happen. So please feel that. I hope you'll feel that sense of empowerment that I want to convey to you, because you're important and you matter. And whatever little you take from here today, I hope you can use it to help someone else.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dawa. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. We're going to post some resources where you can find free resources, along with information about other webinars that Dawa will be teaching, and as well as his book, Mind Your Own Business. So we'll post that in the chat box. Our next session is Thursday, July 9th with Roshi Pat Enkyo O'Hara. Please keep checking garrisoninstitute.org for updated listings of future sessions and to view the recording of this call and others. Again, we provide these sessions free of charge. So if you'd like to support this effort, please consider making a donation at garrisoninstitute.org. May everyone be happy, healthy, and safe.